The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
Hello and welcome to this brand new edition of Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's begin with our big focus, which continues to be on the Israel-Hamas war. Now, even as the Israel-Hamas war rages on in Gaza, having claimed thousands of lives, another violent event shook the Middle East on Wednesday. At least 84 people were killed and almost 300 others injured in the Iranian city of Kerman after twin blasts near the burial site of slain military commander Qasem Soleimani. It's been described by Iranian officials as a terror attack. The blasts came on the 4th anniversary of Soleimani's death in a US airstrike and threatened to accelerate tensions in the region that already seems to be on the boil since the Israel-Hamas war erupted on the 7th of October following Hamas's terror attacks on Israel. No group has claimed responsibility for these blasts, the deadliest to hit Iran since the 1979 revolution. Iran's president, Ibrahim Raisi, has blamed Israel, saying it will pay a heavy price. Raisi said, "I warn the Zionist regime, do not doubt that you will pay a heavy price for this crime and the other crimes you've committed." He warned that Israel's punishment will be regrettable and severe.
I warn the Zionist regime.
Israel has not commented on this matter at all. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has warned that Iran will have a harsh response. He said they should know that the bright soldiers of the path of Soleimani will not tolerate their wickedness and crimes. Formerly one of Iran's most powerful men, Soleimani was the head of the Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force, an elite unit that handles Iran's overseas operations and was deemed to be a foreign terrorist organization by the US. The Pentagon says Soleimani and his troops were responsible for the deaths of hundreds of American and coalition service members and the wounding of thousands more during the Iraq War. General Ismail Qani, Soleimani's longtime lieutenant and his successor as the leader of the Quds Force, said the perpetrators of Wednesday's blast were desperate. He too warned that the Islamic Republic will not change the method of eradicating the Zionist regime. Now, here's what's significant and worrying. These blasts come at a time of heightened tensions in the region as Israel continues to wage a war on Hamas for the third straight month. The war has left more than 23,000 people dead in Gaza and led to skirmishes beyond Israel and Gaza, often involving Iran-backed militias. Consider this. On Tuesday, a senior Hamas leader, Saleh al-Arouri, was killed in a suburb of Lebanon's capital, Beirut, in a blast which most believe was carried out by Israel. Israel has neither confirmed nor denied its involvement, but Hamas and the militant group Hezbollah, which operates from Lebanon and controls the suburb, have blamed Israel and vowed revenge. Last week, Iran and several of its armed proxies accused Israel of assassinating a senior Iranian commander, Sayyid Razi Mousavi, in Syria. Then too, Iran vowed retaliation. Israel didn't comment. Israel accuses Iran of funding and arming Hamas. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said last month that his country is in a multi-arena war, being attacked from 7 arenas, including Iran. He said, "We've already responded and acted in 6 of these decrees." The US has also stepped up its military involvement in the Middle East in recent days. Last month, the US military carried out airstrikes on Iranian-backed Kataib Hezbollah and affiliated groups in Iraq after an attack injured 3 US troops. Then there is the growing threat from the Houthi rebels in Yemen. The Houthis have carried out multiple attacks on merchant vessels in the Red Sea in retaliation for Israel's assault on Hamas, disrupting trade in one of the world's most important waterways. Last week, US helicopters sank 3 boats belonging to Iran-backed Houthi rebels in the Red Sea after coming under fire, killing those on board. The event marked the first time since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war that the United States killed members of this particular rebel group. Also, recent days have seen Turkey arresting over 30 individuals suspected to be Mossad agents, signaling a complex web of intelligence activities at play in West Asia. Therefore, the question we are asking on Global Lens tonight is this: whether or not it admits its involvement in these string of incidents. Is Israel now fully engaged in covert wars in the Middle East? Is Israel going after the Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran axis? And the bigger question is there now a very real threat of the Israel-Hamas war escalating into a wider regional conflagration?
I warn the Zionist regime, don't doubt it. You will pay the price for this crime. These crimes that you have committed, you will deeply regret. And you will see by the power of God that the one who has failed in this field and will leave this field more disgraced than today is the Zionist regime and the criminal America.
We aren't at a point now where we have a lot of great detail on this bombing. Certainly our hearts go out to all the innocent victims and their family members who are obviously, their lives are going to be forever changed by this. But we don't have any more detail in terms of how it happened or who might be responsible for it. We have no indication at this time at all that Israel was involved in any way whatsoever.
No indication, but just to be clear, you don't think, did they support or assist in some other way?
I'm not going to speak for another nation. I would just tell you that we have no indication that Israel was in any way involved in this.
And given that this was the Soleimani anniversary, did you have any intelligence that something was being planned for this day?
We certainly had no indications that there would be some sort of violence surrounding the anniversary of his death.
Incredibly concerned, as we have been from the outset of this conflict, about the risk of the conflict spreading into other fronts. I'm not going to get into that specific detail, but we were not informed in advance. There are still 6 Americans who remain unaccounted for.
Any updates on discussions over then?
No, we continue to work to try to bring all of them home as we try to work to bring other hostages who are not American citizens home. It's a top priority for everyone in this government, and we will not rest until they are brought home. But I, as always, don't want to comment on those negotiations or those discussions from here.
We extend our congratulations and condolences to our dear brother and great leader Sheikh Saleh, deputy leader of Hamas political office, and his fellow leaders and cadre in the Al-Qassam brigades and Hamas, who were martyred yesterday in a flagrant Israeli aggression on the southern suburb of Dahiyeh in Beirut. But the most important manifestation of the axis of resistance and the most dangerous challenge was in these past few months in the issue of Al-Aqsa flood. What happened in these 3 months was a strike against normalization with Israel that aimed to deter around the Palestinian people by normalizing the state of Israel and forgetting about Palestine.
The Secretary General strongly condemns the attack today on a memorial ceremony in Kerman City in the Islamic Republic of Iran, which reportedly killed more than 100 people and injured many more. The Secretary General calls for those responsible to be held accountable. And the Secretary General expresses his deep condolences to the bereaved families and the people and the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and he wishes the injured a speedy recovery.
All right, so what should we make of these developments? Is the theatre of conflict widening? Let's understand. With our panel of experts joining me on Global Lens tonight, we are glad to have Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, a renowned defense and geopolitical expert, joining me from New Delhi. We have with us on the show Major Dan Pfefferman, an Israeli Defense Forces Executive Director, joining us from Israel tonight, and completing the panel is Elizabeth Bro, Senior Associate Fellow at the European Leadership Network, joining us live from the United Kingdom. A warm welcome to all my guests. Thank you so much for joining us. Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, sir, welcome to Global Lens. If I may start with you, sir, very briefly to just recap some of the big developments that we've seen in just the last few days. You've had twin blasts in Israel, coinciding with the anniversary of, Soleimani's killing. At least 80 people are dead. Israel has not commented. The United States says it has nothing to do with it. Israel has nothing to do with it. But Iran is quite clear that Israel is to blame and that Israel will pay a heavy price for it. They have vowed revenge. Then you have the killing of Saleh al-Arouri, a senior Hamas leader. This happened on Tuesday near the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Hezbollah has blamed that on Israel as well. Israel has neither confirmed its involvement nor denied it. Last week, you had a senior Iranian commander, Sayyid Musavi, being eliminated in Syria. Again, the finger of suspicion pointed at Israel. The Israeli defense minister himself said last month that Israel is in a multi-arena war, being attacked from 7 arenas, and that it has already acted in 6 of these theaters. And then you have the US troops going after Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq and the Houthis attacking shipping vessels in the Red Sea. So my question simply is, sir, whatever Israel's stand may be, would it be safe to say that the theater of war has already expanded beyond Gaza and that Israel is, in a sense, fully engaged in covert wars in the region?
Thank you, Neha. Thank you very much for inviting me for this program, which is very, very significant at this juncture. My surmise at this stage from the various description of various actions which have been carried out already is the fact that proxy warfare is not something which is new to West Asia. We have seen this for years, which has been happening. I'm not sure the Israelis were so deeply involved earlier. There were instances when you saw Israeli operatives going as far as Dubai and perhaps carrying out some targeted killings and things like that. But as far as Iran was concerned, all through these years, in much of Iraq, in Lebanon, in other parts of West Asia, most of the actions which have been carried out by Iran have been by proxy. So proxy warfare is not something very new out here. So what you're already seeing is a situation in which no one wants to sort of move beyond a threshold. They are, after what has happened on 7th of October and the Israeli movement into Gaza, everyone is holding back, not wanting to escalate this beyond. We thought that this is going to expand into the Arab world in a very, very quickened kind of a way. It has not happened. What the Houthis are doing is making their own relevance felt out here. What the Iranians are doing is also to attempt to try and make their own relevance felt here. Israel, to my mind, is responding to make sure that while it is engaged on the Gaza front, there has to be a demonstration of its capability on the northern borders. Therefore, in the Lebanon area, beyond Lebanon to the proxy world of Iraq and other areas like that, Israel is also attempting to demonstrate, not to that great extent yet. So everyone is testing the waters. I don't think the threshold has been crossed or is being crossed yet. Targeted killings and assassinations will lead to testing each other's stamina for this kind of a warfare. But beyond that, I don't think this is at the moment escalating into something which is far, far beyond just the kind of proxy situation that we are witnessing.
Okay, interesting. So you don't believe that there is reason to be alarmed at this point about an escalation of this into a wider regional conflagration. However, the impression seems to be that many more players in the Arab region are getting involved, are getting sucked into this war. Please go ahead, sir. You want to...
Yes. Very nice. I'm glad that you've brought this point out. I'm looking at it from a historical point of view. West Asia is not a region which is new to this. This kind of a movement towards a war, towards hostilities has happened in the past many times, no doubt. But if you really go by it, it doesn't happen so quickly. We've seen a rush of activities taking place. No one in West Asia at the moment is interested in war. Everyone knows what the post-COVID economic situation is all around the world, in this region in particular too. Therefore, no one wants to rush into something which is going to be uncontrollable in the very near future. Which is why, which I said, it is all a question of testing the waters and giving demonstrations of capability and nothing more than that at the moment.
Okay, so Israel may be demonstrating its capabilities, but really what is Iran's play here is a big question, because if you speak to Israelis, they believe that Iran was the architect and the mastermind of what happened on the 7th of October. And while Iran may not be directly involved in this conflict, multiple Iran-backed militias are. We will look at that in greater detail with the General Atta Hasnain and our other guests after this short break.
Ram's Ayodhya rebuilt. Ram Lala's Pran Pratishtha. Countdown to January 22nd. Dateline Ayodhya. Catch the mega coverage only on News9 Live.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. We're discussing the Israel-Hamas war and whether Israel is now actively engaged in multiple covert wars in the Arab world as it goes after its enemies. Let me now bring in our Israeli guest, Major Dan Pfefferman. Major Pfefferman, we have outlined on this show a number of incidents that have happened in the last few days that seem to suggest that the theater of conflict may not be completely confined to Gaza. You know, the Israeli defense minister is on record as saying, we are in a multi-arena war. We've been attacked from 6 sides. He even mentioned Iran. And he said that we've actually acted in 6 of these theaters. The question really is, whatever Israel's public stance may be, do you believe that apart from the war that it is waging on Hamas in Gaza, Israel has decided to go after the Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran axis in the entire region, regardless of geography?
Well, a few corrections I think are important. First, the major reserves are retired. I'm not representing the establishment in any way here, just to be clear. This is a war that Israel, the defense minister said, is fighting on 7 fronts. And then he responded in a kind of coded manner that we have responded on 6 of those 7 fronts. And the hint is that either on Iran, Iraq, or Yemen, we have not responded, and he did not clarify which. Whether the actual attack itself was, whether the details of it were coordinated from Iran or just the big picture, it's clear. It's clear to us. It's clear to every researcher and every intelligence agency in this region, and most intelligence agencies around the world, that Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, they're all part of the Iran-backed radical axis. And in their own words, they say very clearly that they seek to disrupt the normalization process, the peace processes taking place in the region. Israel did not seek out, I think it's very important, that on October the 6th, there was a ceasefire from the previous round of fighting in Gaza that Israel had upheld. It's important to remind the listeners and the viewers here that Israel pulled out every last troop and settler from the Gaza Strip in 2006. Israel has no interest in escalation on any of these fronts, and all of what is happening is an Iran-backed campaign to pressure Israel, to pressure the West by pressuring Israel, and to tank and torpedo any prospects of peace. And so Iran itself does not have the military capacity to wage conventional war. And it's quite smart from a political sense in that it uses deniability. So it has built in a very sophisticated manner through the IRGC, the Pasdaran Quds Force. It built this capacity to build, to train, to arm, to indoctrinate, to finance these various proxy groups around the Middle East. Some of them are meant to target and pressure Israel, Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, other groups that are being formed in Syria. but it also arms and funds and trains the Houthis in Yemen. It funds different groups in the Arabian Peninsula, in Bahrain, in Eastern Saudi Arabia, and of course, the Shiite proxies in Iraq. This is just part of Iran's MO, the way that it can wield leverage and pressure around the region while at the same time maintaining deniability. And rather than invest in battleships and tanks and advanced fighter jets, like do the other countries in the world, like do the West, it invests in these proxy groups. And so this is part of the campaign by Iran that is being waged against Israel, against the West, and against the moderate Arab states in a multi-pronged war. Israel is simply responding to these. And by the way, Israel did not start responding to these only on October 8th after this attack. This is a Cold War or a shadow war that has been going on for many, many years behind the scenes. And the Iranian general that was allegedly taken out by Israeli troops in Syria was the head of this kind of foreign operation proxy branch, Mousavi, Iranian General Mousavi, who was taken out reportedly by Israel in Syria.
And any thoughts on the blasts that occurred in Iran? It's interesting, while you're talking about the Iran-backed militias and how Iran operates while maintaining plausible deniability, you're also not denying that Israel is indeed going after its enemies wherever they may be in the Middle East. Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, maybe Qatar tomorrow, because we know that Doha hosts many of the top leaders of Hamas. But do you have any thoughts on what happened in Iran, where close to 100 people were killed?
Sure. So the blast took place in the city of Kerman, where the memorial ceremony is being held by Soleimani. Soleimani was certainly no friend of Israel, no friend of the United States, no friend of most of the countries in the region, because he was the architect of the IRGC Quds Force for many, many years and the right-hand figure to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini. Israel does not, as a general rule, as the way this country operates, does not strike civilians in other targets. It does not back terrorist attacks. It has been credited or attributed, or it has been reported that Israel conducts targeted assassinations or operations, precise operations in Lebanon. The Arouri killing is attributed to Israel. Israel did not deny it or take credit for it. Attacks in Syrian territory. Here and there, you read reports of supposed Israeli strikes in Iraqi territory. Although Israel has never, and this is really not the Israeli MO, is to back in any kind of way terrorist attacks that kill civilians. This is something that Israel knows very well, has suffered. Israelis and, of course, Jewish communities around the world have suffered at the hands of Iranian-backed terrorist attacks. If we go all the way from Argentina to India, the Mumbai attacks, and of course, everything that's happening in Israel and from Hezbollah. But Israel, as its MO and as an ethos in this country, does not conduct or does not back or does not condone attacks on civilians. And we truly wish the Iranian people no harm.
Okay. You know, you say that Israel, as its policy, does not target civilians because Israel has been a victim of terrorism itself. But may I remind you that as we speak, more than 23,000 Palestinians are now dead in Gaza in the 3-month war that has gone on. These are figures that have been put out by the Hamas-controlled health ministry, and they say that a majority of these, in fact, were women and children, and a vast majority were, in fact, civilians. Since you talk so passionately about Israel not going after civilians, and may I also remind you that the International Court of Justice is set to hold public hearings next week on South Africa's genocide case that has been brought up against Israel. Just for perspective, we need to keep all of this in mind. Okay, let me now go across.
If I may respond to that very quickly.
Sure,
First of all, I think charges of genocide are absolutely ludicrous. And the United States backs completely that Israel is not committing genocide. Israel does not target civilians. Israel is fighting an enemy that has spent 20 years and tens of billions of dollars in international aid entrenching itself in a civilian population, and there are civilian casualties. Secondly, I would take with a very, very large grain of salt any Hamas, as you mentioned, Hamas Health Ministry propaganda statistics. For Hamas, everyone killed in Gaza is a civilian. We know for a fact from very reliable IDF statistics that many thousands, we don't know exactly how much, many thousands of those killed are indeed Hamas fighters. We know that many of the civilians were told weeks in advance of the fighting to clear out. And yes, civilians are killed as bystanders in this conflict, and it is tragic, but they are not being targeted, and that is the difference.
Okay, they're not being targeted, but, questions will be asked of Israel as to how it can justify thousands and thousands of people ending up as collateral damage. The war has gone on for 3 long months now. I will go across to our third guest, Elizabeth Bro, in just a moment, but before that, I need to slip into a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
Ram's Ayodhya rebuilt. Ram Lala's Pran Pratishtha. Countdown to January 22nd. Dateline Ayodhya. Catch the mega coverage only on News9 Live.
Pakistani spy agency ISI's sinister plan to target India. Training women to honey trap top civil and military officials. Counter honey trapping ops initiated by India. But gullible victims still caught in the web. Top military intelligence experts break down the web of deception. Colonel Hani Bakshi explains the phenomena of honey trap.
जहाँ पे भी आपको लगेगा, उनको लगेगा कि there is a person who is susceptible to women, who's making a lot of women friends on the social media. That is where they will make a spoof account and then start luring the person.
Colonel Pavitran Rajan decodes the psyche of the victim and the predator.
But when you go up the chain, no one enforces it to people at the top. That disciplinary regime and the security regime is not enforced at the top. And they usually have a public profile where it is much more easier to approach that person.
A News9 special on how modern technology has added teeth to the ancient spying tactic.
Our story takes you inside Pakistan's honey trap machine.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, the US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.
So obviously, diamonds being a dream product, something which doesn't have a utility value or is seen as a luxury. So that obviously goes off your shopping list. That's the first item that will go off your shopping list, especially in recessionary trends.
That lab-grown diamonds are not mined, and they do away with the entire mining. So they save up on all the environmental damage that is associated with mining, and of course, the mining cost, which is why they're even more affordable.
People that is impacted by all these recessions are the artisans, are the people who work in this industry, right? But I think lab-grown diamond has allowed them to actually use their skills in the same product.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens with me, Neha Khanna. Let me now go across to Elizabeth Bro. Elizabeth, thank you very much for waiting patiently. But let me ask you this question. As we talk about a series of incidents that have taken place in the Middle East outside of Gaza, now you actually have a situation where even the UN peacekeeping forces in Lebanon have expressed deep concern over possible escalation and hostilities between Israel and Lebanon. This comes after the killing of Saleh al-Arouri, a senior Hamas leader near the Lebanese capital, Beirut. My question to you simply is, would you agree with those who are expressing concerns that this war could escalate into something much bigger and wider, sucking in more players in the region?
Well, what I can talk about is the effect on the globalized economy, and that effect is already taking place. And in that sense, the conflict is already spreading. And what we are seeing is an extraordinary situation in the Red Sea, extraordinary and intensifying by the day. And we should remember that the Red Sea is not just any body of water. It is an absolutely crucial waterway for the globalized economy. And as we speak, it's really too risky for merchant vessels to travel through the Red Sea. Some are daring to do it anyway, but it is extremely risky. It's also extremely expensive because insurance rates are up. So that means that that the Houthis have really managed to completely make their mark on the global. On global public attention and also on the globalized economy, because now all these vessels are having to go around the Cape of Good Hope, which is much more time consuming and also more expensive, and also just much more hassle logistically. And so if we look at what the Houthis have achieved by targeting vessels in the Red Sea, it stands to reason that other militia groups will say, well, this is how to get the world's attention and how to influence global events. We will do the same. And I worry that that's what will happen. Either existing militias or hostile states can say, well, we'll stand up a militia that can do similar things in other bodies of water. And since you are an Indian TV channel, I think one thing to bear in mind is that a very significant group of people that are being affected by this are Indian seafarers, who are one of the largest groups staffing, crewing international shipping today.
In fact, since you mentioned India, let me tell you that a merchant vessel from India came under a drone attack recently in the Gulf of Aden, and the Pentagon said that Iran was responsible for launching that drone attack. Iran denied it. But you're quite right. What's happening in the Red Sea is extremely worrying. The Houthis have successfully disrupted one of the most important and busiest sea routes in the world. And now you have the US leading an international maritime alliance, of multiple countries that have in fact issued a statement threatening the Houthis with serious consequences if they do not stop attacking shipping vessels in the Red Sea. These countries include Australia, Bahrain, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Singapore, and the UK. All right, let me go back to Lieutenant General Atta Hussain at this point. So, as you're well aware, Israel has drawn a lot of flack in recent weeks as the death toll in Gaza has gone up drastically. Of course, there are claims and counterclaims. The Palestinian Health Ministry says more than 23,000 have been killed. Most were civilians, women and children. The Israelis say we take those claims with a bag full of salt. But that apart, what do you make of the fact that on the one hand, Israel, right at the start of this year, said that this war could actually continue through all of 2024, and they've budgeted for it. They've said this is going to cost them a minimum of $14 billion in 2024. But on the other hand, Israel seems to be changing tack in Gaza. They've announced that they're going to withdraw many of their troops from northern Gaza, mostly reservists, who will get to return to civilian life. And the argument is that this will not only shore up the war-battered economy of Israel, but this could free up units to deal with a possible escalation on the Lebanese front with Hezbollah. What is your take, sir? Do you believe that Israel has indeed entered that next phase of the war where you're going to see more precision strikes, where you're going to see more surgical operations and lower intensity operations? Because remember that this is something that the United States too has been pressurizing Israel to do to minimize civilian casualties.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very well put across analysis and questions, I must say. These are absolutely with military orientation that you have actually put them across to me.
Thank you, sir. That's very kind of you.
Let me start by saying, right at the beginning, after 7th of October, there was a lot of apprehension whether Israel would at all go in for the ground offensive. 350,000 troops were mobilized. Not an easy job. For a country of 8-9 million people, 350,000 is a huge figure. I was very, very apprehensive. How long can this mobilization continue? Israel cannot afford to keep an army of 350,000 mobilized forever. So that's obviously what you are seeing at the moment is absolutely right. There will be a downscaling of the strength which is entered into Gaza. And you're absolutely right. After all the criticism of the world which has come there, and including criticism from the United States, including from the Defense Secretary during his second visit there, that you can't go in for this kind of a ad hoc, across-the-board bombing of the entire Gaza Strip. It has to be precision-based. I know it is very difficult as a professional, I know it, that the Israeli armed forces are going to find it very difficult to carry out precision strikes in this area because the Hamas has merged into all kinds of civilian areas. The kind of infrastructure that they have built is very difficult to demarcate them separately from civilized areas, from civilian areas. So this is going to continue to be a challenge. But if Israel wants to keep the world on its side, if Israel wants to be seen in positive light by its supporters in the United States and elsewhere, it has to tone down. I won't say it has to stop everything, it has to tone down. Because I can see that Israel is hell-bent on making sure that they eliminate the Hamas capability to interfere actively within Israel, within the hinterland of Israel. But I do not foresee a conflict termination in which the last Hamas terrorist has been killed. It's not possible. And Israel must realize that. We in India are also in the same mode in Kashmir, where we realize that 100 terrorists can keep you active for years and years. Israel cannot afford to do that. It must therefore find the means to end this entire thing. Secondly, the northern front. I know Hezbollah is very active at the moment. Israel has had an experience in 2006. 100,000 troops of the Hezbollah can be brought to bear on the northern border. There is the Syrian side also. There are the proxies also from Iran here. This is a potent threat for Israel. There is no doubt about it, and therefore it must cater for it if it has to militarily. Therefore, the way it is going to do it, or the way it is likely to do it at the moment, switching some forces, demobilizing some forces, I think is the most sensible way forward. That's the way which it can carry on. But I would be the happiest to see Israel looking at planning a conflict termination at the earliest, because that will be something which will be to their advantage. They have demonstrated their capability. Hamas has initiated whatever it had to initiate. Its own narrative of its own significance has been displayed and demonstrated all over the Middle East. Now I think it's time that Hamas has to be prevailed upon. Iran has to be spoken to, pressurized. There are other countries around the world who have not entered into this at all so far. China, for example, which announced in such a great way how it had, carried out an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now, where is China? China must come in if it has to find any kind of a significance in the Middle East in the future. Therefore, Iran ultimately, though no one wants to directly ever admit that Iran is totally the sponsor behind this entire thing going on with about the Hamas, but everyone knows it. And knows that without Iranian capability, without Iranian backing, this kind of a thing could not have happened. Therefore, I think a lot of talking has to be done. And it's not just threatening each other, it has to be a lot of talk. Otherwise, economically, this is going to be such a mess, as very correctly said by our fellow panelists just now here. This is going to be such a mess. The Red Sea completely broken down, communications in the Red Sea broken down, the other waterways in similar kind of a catastrophe, the Houthi rebels all over once again after finishing up the war with Saudi Arabia seem to be so active all over again. Obviously, this is a part of the overall sponsorship which Iran has been able to spread into this area. So I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not putting fingers in Iran. I'm not putting fingers on Israel, etc. Everyone is deeply involved. Israel obviously has to defend itself for an action like this. The Hamas is trying to make itself relevant to probably put off all those peace measures which have been taking place, keep making them irrelevant in this process. So this is a nasty kind of a situation which the world has to look at much more seriously in the near future.
Absolutely. In fact, it is widely believed that even the Biden administration, the staunchest ally of Netanyahu and his government, is worried about the perception that's being created around the world given the rising death toll in Gaza. But sir, I'm glad that you talked about how it may be virtually impossible for Israel to take out the last Hamas operative. So I want to step back and to look at the big picture with you for a moment. I've had multiple guests on my show saying that Israel may have bitten off more than it can chew. It may have set itself unrealistic military targets. Every time you hear the Prime Minister or the Defense Minister of Israel talking about the war, they say, we are not going to stop this war until we've achieved complete victory over Hamas, and that means completely eliminating Hamas. But then there are those who argue, can you really completely eliminate Hamas, which is not just a terror outfit, but also an idea or an ideology? And that is something that people like you understand very well, because we've seen how radicalization works. We've seen it for decades in Kashmir. Also, I want to quote to you and our viewers some very interesting statements that have been made by some leaders. The Jordanian Prime Minister said that even as Israel hopes to root out terrorism, fact of the matter is that the number of civilian killings we've seen in Gaza are enough to radicalize an entire generation of Palestinians. And the French President Emmanuel Macron said, can Israel really hope to achieve lasting security for its citizens and durable peace while killing so many civilians and Palestinians in Gaza and creating so much angst and outrage in the Arab world? Because at the end of the day, these are countries that Israel is surrounded by. To my mind, these are perfectly legitimate arguments. Do you agree?
Very realistic and a very good analysis. But let me make 2 points here for you. The first is the aspect of winnability of this war. What Israel perhaps has to realize, I'm sure the military leadership realizes it, it's the political leadership which has to realize it. That whatever has happened has been a preparation by the Hamas over a period of time. Can Israel ever seal off the entire Gaza Strip? There is a Mediterranean angle to it, there's an Egyptian angle to it, and of course there's the Israeli border itself. How did tons and tons of cement and concrete go in to build those tunnels which Hamas is fighting from? How come 130,000 missiles and other rockets reached inside Hamas territory or Gaza, if Israel was trying to seal this area? Can Israel ever seal this? We know it also when we look at our line of control. It's very difficult to seal a border anyway. You can't put a man at every 1 meter to stop material resources, money or arms and ammunition coming in. So Israel has to be realistic about this. The second point I take for cue from what you said. You see, the global cycle of terror virtually ended around 2019-2020, just in time with the COVID pandemic at that time. We have been fortunate for the last 4 years, particularly. After the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the US withdrawal, we have seen a gravitation of many of the terror groups going into Afghanistan and lying low there. What is happening at the moment in the Middle East is giving a tremendous boost to the capability and possibility of the second cycle of terror emerging. All this is what precedes a cycle of terror. And this is exactly what is happening. If you see Pakistan, Afghanistan is active, Iran seems to be active, Syria is active, all the borders are active, the Houthis are active. The entire area is engulfed once again with all kinds of elements who could be called terrorists. And therefore, this is exactly what happened in 2003. If you remember how the ISIS ultimately emerged in those 10 years, when everyone's attention was on all kinds of things, and you found the Al-Qaeda in Iraq actually building up and developing itself into the ISIS.
Yeah.
So this is another very dangerous aspect which Israel will have to keep in mind.
You're quite right, sir. And I think what's happened since the 7th of October, whether it was the Hamas terror attacks on Israel or the war that is being waged in Gaza with so many people losing their lives, all of it should worry the entire world at large. But on that note, Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hussain, sir, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I would also like to thank Elizabeth Bro and Major Dan Pfefferman. Thank you so much to all my panelists for joining me on Global Lens tonight. All right, let's now shift our focus to the big story that has emanated from the United States in the last 24 hours. A New York judge has begun the process of unsealing court documents related to the notorious sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, shedding light on previously undisclosed details and prominent names associated with the case. The unsealed documents, including nearly 1,000 pages of depositions and statements, implicate many high-profile individuals such as former US Presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump and Britain's Prince Andrew. The first batch of unsealed documents released on Wednesday is part of a larger set expected to include almost 200 names, ranging from Epstein's accusers to influential figures in business and politics. An Epstein accuser, Johanna Joberg, in her 2016 deposition, recounted Epstein's claim that Bill Clinton likes them young, referring to girls. Now, Clinton also had an affair, if you recall, with the 22-year-old White House intern during his time as the US president. Clinton reportedly has been referred to more than 50 times in the redacted documents as John Doe 36. Another accuser, Virginia Giuffre, claimed to have seen Clinton with two young women on Epstein's Island, which Clinton denies ever visiting. Despite Clinton's denial, flight records show he used Epstein's plane for international trips after his presidency, going to places like Paris, Bangkok and Brunei. Court documents unveiled an email from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell, his associate, proposing a reward to disprove allegations made by Virginia Giuffre. The email outlines a plan to counter Giuffre's claims, including the sensational allegation that renowned physicist Stephen Hawking participated in an underage orgy. However, Epstein's emails to Maxwell refute that claim. Now, Joberg's deposition also included a mention of Donald Trump, with Epstein allegedly suggesting they contact Trump during a flight. The relationship between Maxwell and Epstein evolved from a romantic connection in the early 1990s to a disturbing partnership in sex crimes spanning 3 decades. Virginia Giuffre also mentioned a disturbing incident in March 2001 when she claimed to be trafficked to Britain's Prince Andrew, describing it as a wicked and really scary time. She claimed that after a nightclub visit, Ghislaine Maxwell instructed her to do for Andrew what I do for Jeffrey. Prince Andrew said he never met Virginia and denied her claims. The files also mentioned Johanna Joberg, who has claimed that Prince Andrew groped her while they were seated on a couch inside Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan apartment in 2001. Some of the other high-profile personalities named in these documents include Google co-founder Larry Page, billionaire hedge fund manager Glenn Dubin, Nobel laureate Lawrence Krauss, iconic singer Michael Jackson, magician David Copperfield, comedian Chris Tucker, actor Kevin Spacey, Victoria's Secret magnate Lev Exner, and supermodel Naomi Campbell. Epstein, a well-connected financier in the United States and abroad, faced accusations of sexually assaulting young girls. However, his suicide by hanging in a New York prison in August 2019 at the age of 66 abruptly halted all the legal proceedings against him. Dozens of women have accused Epstein of forcing them to provide sexual services to him and his guests at his private Caribbean island and his homes in New York, Florida, and New Mexico. Epstein socialized with Wall Street titans, royalty and celebrities before pleading guilty to soliciting prostitution in 2008. According to a report, Jeffrey Epstein left behind a $634 million fortune. Much of that money was paid to the victims through a compensation fund following his death. All right, let's now turn our attention to our neighborhood, and the next story is from China, and this may in fact surprise you. Rare and rich praise has been heaped on India and its leadership by Global Times, the publication widely seen as the mouthpiece for the Communist Party of China and President Xi Jinping. An opinion piece written by Zhang Xiaodong, director of the Center for South Asian Studies at Fudan University in China, states, and I quote, "I recently visited India twice, marking my first visit in 4 years. During the trips, I found that India's domestic and foreign situation have changed tremendously compared to 4 years ago. India has achieved outstanding results in economic development and social governance, and its great power strategy has moved from dream to reality. However, potential risks and crises have also begun to unfold. On the one hand, India has made great achievements in economic development and social governance. Its economy has gained momentum and is on track to becoming one of the fastest growing major economies. Meanwhile, New Delhi has made progress in urban governance. Although the haze is still serious, the distinctive smell that hit you as soon as you stepped off the plane 4 years ago has generally disappeared. This suggests that public environment in New Delhi has improved somewhat. During my talks with Indian representatives, I noticed, he says, their attitude towards Chinese scholars was more relaxed and moderate instead of being stubborn at times. With its rapid economic and social development, India has become more strategically confident and more proactive in creating and developing a Bharat narrative. In the diplomatic sphere, India has rapidly shifted towards a great power strategy. Since Prime Minister Narendra Modi assumed power, he has advocated for a multi-alignment strategy, promoting India's ties with the US, Japan, Russia and other countries and regional organizations. Now, India's strategic thinking and foreign policy has undergone another change and is clearly moving towards a great power strategy. In the political and cultural spheres, India has moved from emphasizing its democratic consensus with the West to highlighting the Indian feature of democratic politics. Currently, there's even more emphasis on the Indian origins of democratic politics. India not only seeks to escape the political dwarf resulting from its history as a colony, but also wants to act as a world mentor, both politically and culturally. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has emphasized the importance of building a strong Bharat narrative and explained the Bharat narrative in terms of economics, development, politics and culture. Obviously, India no longer only regards cultural tradition as a channel to achieve its own interests or as a symbol to attract foreign tourists, but also sees it as one of the pillars of India's status as a great power. India has always considered itself a world power. However, it has only been less than 10 years since India shifted from multi-balancing to multi-alignment, and now it's rapidly transforming towards a strategy of becoming a pole in the multipolar world. The speed of such changes is rarely seen in the history of international relations. India is indeed a major power, and rapid changes in internal and external strategies pose challenges to both itself and the international community. It appears that a transformed, stronger and more assertive India has become a new geopolitical factor that many countries need to consider. As we said, rich praise and rare too, coming from Global Times, the official mouthpiece, many would say, for the Chinese government. All right, and as we wrap up Global Lens tonight, let's get you some news from India's other neighbor, Pakistan, which is headed for polls. Pakistan People's Party has nominated its chairman and former Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari as its official prime ministerial candidate ahead of the general election slated to be held in the country on the 8th of February. The party posted on X, formerly Twitter, President Asif Ali Zardari presented the name of Chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari as a candidate for the Prime Minister on behalf of Pakistan People's Party. The executive committee has endorsed Bilawal Bhutto Zardari as the prime ministerial candidate of PPP. Now, the 35-year-old son of slain former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto is contesting from Lahore. Bilawal has been quoted as saying, General Zia imposed the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz on us, and General Faiz Hamid imposed the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, that's Imran Khan's party. Both the PML, Nawaz and PTI are representative of the ruling elite, he said. The PPP is the only party that always came up with its vision and manifesto before the polls and kept people on priority. That is what Bilawal Bhutto Zardari has said, whose party is hoping that he will be the next Prime Minister of Pakistan. And that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us again at the same time tomorrow.
It was my 14th birthday.
On birthday, daughter waits
Home missing father.
He was carrying a cake for his daughter.
49-year-old Birmingham-based
Indian diplomat vanishes.
He was grabbed and bundled into a car by 4 assailants.
KLA claims responsibility. Demands Kashmiri separatists.
Maqbool Bhatt's release.
Goli maros, aur feck do.
And within 3 days, they shot him dead.
Abducted diplomat.
Found murdered in Leicestershire.
I said, who ordered to kill him? To me, he said, I ordered it.
And he never came home.